We talked in that last video about getting rid of the strokes, but first of all, let's go ahead and save our work, Command S, then Shift Command S for Save As. And yeah, you might as well learn it. Command S, Save, Shift Command S, Save As. I'm going to go ahead and hit that right arrow and name it 4, just in case something goes horribly wrong. When we become more advanced with Illustrator, it's important to save out versions, but not necessarily at the rate at which we're saving versions right now. So if we select this, you can see it's still a live paint group because it's got these weird handles. If we want to get rid of the stroke, just make sure if the fill's in the foreground, you have to have the stroke in the foreground, have the focus on the stroke, and then click on the none. You can change the stroke to nothing, and now if we deselect, you can see there are no black lines around everything. Now, 2 things I want to show you about the live paint group. If we select this, and it has to be selected, notice the live paint, the little handles, see how they're larger and they've got that weird symbol there? Object, live paint. Now there's 3 things here. Release, gap options, and expand, okay? And merge, we'll talk about that later. So right now, live paint, release takes us back past the beginning. It takes you back to just paths, just raw paths. If everything goes wrong, you want to start over, you can do it that way. And notice it's no longer a live paint group. You actually have to come back up and do live paint and make again. But I don't want to do that. I want to undo, Command Z, so we get our live paint group back. Now, the gap options, object, live paint, this is if you were drawing. Our corners touch. We don't have any openings. But if you were drawing and you're trying to fill in an area and it leaks to another area because your lines don't quite touch, well, you don't necessarily have to modify your lines. You can change gap detection. You can experiment with this. It all depends on how you're working, which one of these you pick. So go ahead, if you're drawing, experiment with the gaps and how that works for you. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. What I want to show you here is this is not always something you want to do, but sometimes this is. Right now we have 1 object. What if we wanted 5 objects? We could go to Live Paint and Expand. Now under Object, Expand and Expand Appearance do some really cool things. In Live Paint, it does something else. And that is, see the live paint handles? When we click expand, those handles are gone, and now it's just back to a regular object. But if I click on one thing, I select everything. And that's not because this is one object anymore. It's because if I right-click on this and select ungroup, Shift Command G. Group is Command G, ungroup is Shift Command G. You're going to use group and ungroup all the time. If I ungroup, notice how now we have these individual paths that just showed up. And that means if I deselect, you can click on anything and move these things independent of one another. Okay? Sometimes this can be really cool. Sometimes not. It depends on what you're doing. Okay? So, but valuable to know. And if we undo, and I didn't like how they just moved out a little bit. What if we took this orange, selected it, and went Shift Up Arrow? Up arrow moves it 1 pixel. I'm going to hit Command Z. Shift Up Arrow moves it 10 pixels. Shift Right Arrow, 10 pixels, and I think you know where this is going. The different arrows along with Shift let you move things a specific amount. Okay? So, little added bonus, and from here you could go ahead and turn this into a live paint group and do stuff like that, but I just wanted to show you that because I see people grabbing the paintbrush and trying to color in areas. Select an area, use live paint, and fill it in that way. Don't use a paintbrush. And if you are going to fill, here's a little bonus tip, don't use the paintbrush tool. Use the blob brush. The blob brush creates shapes that merge together. Here, let me show you. Here's the blob brush. Here's the blob brush. And right now we have 2 distinct shapes. If I color in between these 2, now we have 1 shape. If we select it, it's just 1 shape. If I use the paintbrush, this is the terrible part. of the paintbrush is you color and you color and you color, and you get all these paths that you got this mess. And if you select it all, you got all these individual paths that are just a mess. Trust me, the blob brush is the way to go if you can't use the live paint bucket. There you go, a little bonus tip here. Save your work, go on to the next quest.